Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. There's only one topic today. We'll obviously divide it up into three different subsets. But Jim, this would have been a huge news day anyway, with the start of the Republican National Convention. You're headed there for a big chunk of the week. We'll talk about that a little bit in the first martini. And then this morning, Judge Eileen Cannon dismisses the Trump classified documents case because she says that Jack Smith is not a properly appointed special counsel, which I'm sure people on the left are going to love. But we're not going to talk about that today. Obviously, we're going to talk about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Butler County, Pennsylvania on Saturday. But if you do want some insight into this Judge Cannon decision, go back and listen to the June 24th edition of the Three Martini Lunch when Andy McCarthy was filling in for Jim. Our first martini that day was about the arguments about whether Jack Smith's appointment was legitimate. But in terms of what we saw on Saturday, Jim, I was not watching live, but I know people who were, and they immediately called me to tell me what was happening. And then you race to a TV and then you watch the footage on loop. And Jim, millimeters and microseconds is the difference between Donald Trump having a bloody ear and being dead today. As I said to my wife and other people over the last day or two, this is the grace of God. If Donald Trump doesn't have the Jumbotron with the illegal immigration statistics and he doesn't tilt his head at the exact split second that the guy fires the shot, he's probably deceased at this moment. Donald Trump is very fortunate to be alive today. Unfortunately, we do have one confirmed fatality, a hero in every sense, protecting his family from the bullets. His name was Corey Comparator. I've heard many different pronunciations, but that seems to be the most common one. The Secret Service flooding the stage. Those Secret Service members are heroes. We'll talk about other ones in a moment, but racing to the former president when the hail of bullets came, getting him out of there. The iconic moment of Trump, classic Trump standing up, raising the fist, saying to fight on. And I think that's something the public needed, was to, A, know he was okay, and just to say we're not going to stand for that sort of thing. So that as prelude, we're going to get into plenty that's bad and crazy, obviously, about this. But just the fact that we avoided one of the darkest days in American history on Saturday is a reason to be thankful today.
Yeah. Look, if you're a believer, I think it's very easy to say, wow, that feels like witnessing a miracle. If you're not a believer, then it's something uncanny. It is something that we came so close to that you're just kind of marveling at this. And I think, we'll talk about some of the exceptions, but by and large, left, right, and center, Trump dodged a bullet. And I think it's safe to say it felt like the country dodged a bullet that had, there's already at this moment, fear, anger, anxiety, disbelief, shock, all these kinds of emotions over those who were killed, those who were seriously injured, and what turns out, thankfully, a very minor wound to former President Trump. But boy, when the blood's coming out, it doesn't look all that minor, and you're just kind of marveling that had the worst happened, all those emotions would be worse, and you don't know if this, we're already you're probably going to see even greater security in Milwaukee. There's always a lot of security at political conventions, but and thankfully most of them have passed with really minor or minimal incidents. But something like this can bring the crazies out. We don't know much as of this recording. We don't know a lot about the shooter. It could be what I'm going to call a garden variety nut, somebody who thinks they're going to impress Jodie Foster, or somebody who thinks grammar is a conspiracy or something like that. Or it may be this person this is very much political violence, somebody who wanted to kill Trump because he believed he was going to be a dictator and the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. There was the donation to the liberal group. Shooter allegedly was a registered Republican. I wouldn't put too much stock into that, just the sense that lots of people registered Republican because they wanted to vote against Trump in the primary. So far, no manifestos, so no major paper trail or social media trail pointing to much. Unfortunately, we're getting that same kind of almost cliched profile of a mass shooter, quiet, left to himself, bullied a bit in school. But the person, 20 years old, just kind of marveling that somebody that young could be driven to do something that malevolent, that wrong. So yes, I woke up this morning. I was very glad I saw it, shortly after the news broke, was following on Twitter. I was very glad that I didn't have to write anything Saturday night. I was very glad I didn't have to write anything Sunday, that I had time to kind of digest and look at this, because I think a lot of our troubles come when it's hot takes and it's the first thought that pops into people's heads. And like I said, I think when I woke up this morning and sat down to write, I felt this strange sense of gratitude, this strange sense of relief, believe it or not. Yes, what happened is awful and scary, and the loss of life is horrific and unjustifiable, and is going to cast a pall over the rest of this presidential election. And I think there's going to be a certain amount of anxiety in every political event from now until Election Day. But could have been so much worse. Could have been, really a dark... Like, we've had a lot of bad moments in our recent history. 9/11, Great Recession, COVID, January 6th. Like, there's been no shortage of political violence. We have not had a presidential assassination or a near successful presidential assassination. And for that, we should count our blessings. And so that's what feels good about today, is it could have been so much worse, and we have the chance to go ahead with what we hope will be as normal as possible, a presidential race. Now, maybe nothing about this is going to seem normal, but we get to go through with this process with Donald Trump intact. And according to some comments to Selena Zito and some other folks, I don't know if he's going to be a completely changed man. But it's very hard to believe you go through an experience like that and aren't changed in some way. And it's been interesting to hear Trump saying things like, "But for the grace of God," they don't only God Himself stopped that. So, just a shaking weekend, a shaking sequence of events. But all in all, we're not in nearly as bad a spot as we could have been. And for that, we should be thankful.
You and I are old enough to remember when Reagan was shot in 1981. We were young kids at that point, and I don't think we understood necessarily the gravity of the situation.
Kindergarten, we knew it was bad.
Yeah.
We knew it was not. No, nobody was acting like, oh, this is great news back then, thankfully. So,
Yeah. Well, you and I are roughly the same age, and I was out in the driveway shooting baskets and on a 10-foot hoop at that age. It's not super easy, but I made 3 or 4 in a row, and I ran into the house to tell my mom, and she's like, no, not now. The president's been shot. Do you not understand that I just made 5 shots in a row?
That's a big deal. Okay, I'm traveling Thursday, but whoever's my guest host for me, they should make this Greg made 5 shots in a row day, and we should give you that long delayed celebration. Long deserved, always overlooked. So there you go.
Yeah, and Selena Zito was actually at the rally. She was just beneath the podium, and a Trump advance person had to cover her while this was happening. And so the fact that Trump says he's basically scrapping the old speech and coming with a new one about unity could be very interesting. And maybe these are the things that we unify around. We should spend less. We should secure our border. The big issues that the American public are pretty lopsided on. So we'll see.
Just one last thought. Yeah, as I mentioned, the sheer number of times it has felt like things have gone about as bad as they possibly can. Right? You look back on the review of the 9/11 attacks and all the different ways in which they could have been caught, or at least some of the hijackers could have been caught, and it didn't. All the different people who did not sound the alarm on Lehman Brothers and the run up to the Wall Street meltdown. All the different missed warnings about some mysterious outbreak in Wuhan that were not taken as seriously as they should, particularly by the Chinese. Like there are a lot of times you're like, God, it feels like we roll snake eyes. In this case, the worst did not happen, and we're just, I don't want to beat the drum too much here, but it just feels like could have been a lot worse, and we should all be kind of counting our blessings at this moment.
Yeah, our country would be in a very dark, chaotic place right now if the worst had happened, and literally a split-second turn of the head. Praise God for that. All right, Jim, on to the bad martini now, and the inevitable, how in the world did this happen? The Secret Service, as we mentioned, those who were just behind Trump on the stage, and those who were right in front of the stage, as soon as Trump had the wherewithal to duck down, they covered him until they got the all clear that the shooter was down. But once we understood what happened here, that this shooter was, about 150 yards away, maybe 400 feet at the most, on top of this roof with a direct line of sight to the president. And we found out that it appears that this building was pointed out in the walkthrough prior to the rally. But nonetheless, this shooter apparently got up there. Allegedly, it was outside of the Secret Service perimeter, so that was local law enforcement who was supposed to be over there. But How it's not covered, how there's not already law enforcement on that roof, I don't know. There's video certainly of people pointing out to the police around that area. Hey, there's a guy up there and he's got a rifle, and they didn't get to it in time. Then the AP yesterday, Jim, one officer climbed to the roof and encountered the shooter, who pointed his rifle at the officer. The officer retreated down the ladder, and crooks quickly took a shot towards former President Trump. And that's when the Secret Service counter snipers shot him. Corey Comparator is not supposed to be the one taking the bullets. If anyone's going to take a bullet in that situation, and it's a hard situation, your instinct probably is to flee, it's the people who are tasked with securing the event. We did not get the Secret Service at the press conference late Saturday night. We still haven't seen the director. We still don't have any explanation as to how that happened. There's going to be a lot of questions here. And right now, I don't think there's going to be a lot of good answers.
So the U.S. Secret Service, I think when people hear that, they probably picture either Clint Eastwood in The Line of Fire or any of the Gerard Butler movies, like this, they this square-jawed, steely willingness to jump in front of an assassin's bullet. Like there's a lot of glamour associated with that image. My colleague Dominic Pino went through going back to the reports of the guys hanging out with prostitutes in Venezuela. There have been reports that things are not as they should be. The discipline is not where there should be. The professionalism is not there. Now, look, I'm sure a large part of the job is long stretches of boredom and not dealing with a potential assassin. It requires you to be on alert for very long stretches with nothing actually happening. And I'm sure that makes it a very tough job. On the other hand, you signed up for this, and this is the job. And all cases of, lost weapons. Remember, there was a guy who got into the White House, even going back to Salahi's at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. All kinds of, up until now, relatively minor slip-ups, but that seemed troubling, that seemed just not what we'd come to expect from the U.S. Secret Service. It's a long time, but Dan Bongino was talking about this for a long time through his career as a former U.S. Secret Service agent. I think one of the reports that jumped out to me the most yesterday was by the Washington Post, by a correspondent, Carol Lenig, who wrote a book in 2021, Zero Fail, The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service. So you figure, she's written a book about this, you figure she's pretty well sourced. And she mentions that the Secret Service spokesman, Anthony Guglielmi, I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly, confirmed Sunday that the agency relied on local police at the Trump rally to fill out significant parts of its typical array of specialized protective units, including its heavily armed counter-assault team that provided cover as Trump's detail evacuated him, and the counter-sniper teams that ultimately spotted and killed the shooter. Now, the U.S. Secret Service has to protect President, Vice President, First Lady, First Gentleman, as well as former presidents, former First Ladies, and former Vice Presidents. It's a lot of people. Now, I don't know how many people are on each particular detail. I don't know whether it's a handful of people. But the former presidents and vice presidents have the option of turning down Secret Service protection if they want to. But under the law, they're supposed to get that for the rest of their days. That seems like a lot. And you kind of sit there and wonder, is the Secret Service undermanned? Does it just not have enough top-tier good personnel to go around? I know there was a report saying that some of them were pulled from Trump's detail to go on Jill Biden's detail. That has not yet been confirmed. The Secret Service denied it. I think what we can say is that the Secret Service has a lot of people it needs to protect. And if your A team is on the president, and your B team is on the vice president, maybe your C team is on the when you get down to your former presidents, are you getting down there? And according to this report, are they more reliant on local law enforcement partners? And when you have something like a circumstance like that, is the communication not as quick or as efficient or what it needs to be? That, at first glance, that would seem to be the simple, Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is most likely. But yeah, it is very weird. Like these videos circulating that indicates that people did see him on the roof and did very quickly ascertain that he was up to no good and kind of yelling out. And it's unclear whether they were able to get the attention. There was a report from the AP that some police officer tried to get up on the roof, saw the gun pointed at him and ducked back down and was not ready to take him out. On the one hand, that's a lot to ask of a local cop. On the other hand, you're doing security for a presidential event and there's a guy up on a roof with a gun. Like how many different things could that be? And then the third thing, which is this weird anecdote of saying that, well, if you're the Secret Service, you don't want to take the shot and kill somebody who's got a telescope or something like that. Well, I get that. On the other hand, if you're going to see the president, maybe you don't go up on a roof and take a long object and, look like you're aiming at the president. Or at minimum, do you then radio that in, and does the president get moved? Like, it just feels like some sort of fundamental breakdown in how this is supposed to work. And I have a very hard time believing that, this idea of you can't shoot until the guy shoots. That's kind of saying, oh, you get one free shot, and then we respond, and then we take you out. So lots of hard questions, and I know there are a lot of people who are suspicious, who kind of feel like this sense of like, oh, they'll issue a report in 6 months saying tisk procedures were not followed. Everybody gets a slap on the wrist. Nobody gets fired over this. I'm really tempted. In fact, on the Hugh Hewitt show, Greg, I mentioned that if you were here, I would have said, you ask for miracles, I give you the FBI, quoting Hans Gruber. The FBI, interagency rivalries may be our best bet to get to the bottom of this, that the FBI would be very happy to expose bad decisions and bad mistakes and bad policies over at the U.S. Secret Service. Because otherwise, I think we feel like we've seen lots of other problems with the Secret Service happen before, and they've told us it's fixed, and it does not feel like it's fixed at all.
There have been some saying that the Trump campaign requested more beefed up Secret Service, and there are reports from other people saying that those were not denied, that some of the pro-Trump people say they were denied. So Comer's going to do an investigation with this with the House Oversight Committee. Hopefully they get to the bottom of this and get to the bottom of it quickly. As far as the FBI, they've got some of their own reputational issues, so hopefully they get to the bottom of this quickly. Taking a long time to ID the shooter, I don't think helped, but hopefully that was on the up and up. They do need to crack this phone, though. This whole idea of it's at Quantico, but we can't get into the guy's phone. But somehow they know that the guy acted alone. Well, until you know his data, how do you make these conclusive statements? You might be right. I think they can probably conclude at this point that he was the only one at the event that was part of this. But I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know until you can get into his information how you can conclude that. That's all.
How certain can you be about that? Exactly. Yeah.
All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini as it relates to the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump on Saturday. And, oh boy, the media, oh my goodness. Well, I was flipping around as this footage of the assassination attempt was on loop and watched it a few times on Fox. Then I flipped over to CNN, where they were very careful at the beginning to call it loud noises or loud bangs. And they were probably just initially trying to be careful. But if you actually listen to the loop, you can hear the Secret Service screaming, "Shooters down, shooters down," which would probably tip you off that there was a shooter. So I was watching CNN when the statement came in from the Secret Service that the shooter was neutralized. And as the reporter explained, when the Secret Service says someone's been neutralized, it means they're no longer alive. And so Wolf Blitzer, and it's the only time I laughed out loud probably the whole time on Saturday evening, says, "Oh, well, the Secret Service is saying there was a shooter. That probably tells us there were shots. Thanks, Wolf." Appreciate the dynamite analysis there. But as we were waiting for that official word, CNN Online had a headline, "Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally." USA Today, "Trump removed from stage by Secret Service after loud noises startle former president, crowd." Apple, "At least 2 people are dead after a shooting at a Trump rally." Well, that kind of buries the lead, doesn't it? And then the Sunday Denver Post has the picture of Trump defiantly with a fist in the air, tiny, tiny, tiny font up top saying Trump says he was shot in the ear, and then the big banner headline, "Gunman dies in attack." So, Jim, it only gets better from there, or worse, really. Here's Margaret Brennan on CBS after Trump issued his first statement on social media saying that he was fine, he was shot in the ear. Can't believe this can happen in our country. There was nothing inflammatory in the written statement, but here's Margaret Brennan.
This was a traumatic event, no doubt, for him, but I did notice there was no call for lowering the temperature, condemning all political violence, and really trying to signal to his supporters as well not to retaliate or to have any kind of escalation here.
Is that really the job of the shooting victim?
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure, Greg, Trump condemned the attempt to shoot him. I think that goes without saying. I welcome it. It was real. It was refreshing. It was a delightful change of pace. No, of course he did.
Crazy. And one more clip. Jamie Gangel, CNN, who's not happy at all about how Trump initially responded in the moment.
I do want to say there was one thing that when I watched the tape, I found odd because of all of the heated rhetoric. And that is that after he was hit, former President Trump got up and said, fight, fight, fight. I think what we're hearing from people is that's not the message that we want to be sending right now. We want to tamp it down.
You gotta be absolutely kidding me. These people are impossible. And then this morning, Jim, the odd media news is that Morning Joe was not on the air. It's allegedly going to be back on the air tomorrow. And according to a CNN story, a person familiar with the matter told CNN that the decision was made to avoid a scenario in which one of the show's stable of 24+ guests might make an inappropriate comment on live television that could be used to assail the program and network as a whole. Or you could just book people that aren't going to throw Molotov cocktails rhetorically. So what do you make of the media's performance?
Well, first of all, Greg, I got to point out the first time I saw the video of Trump, pumping his fist, I thought he was saying another F word. And he had just been shot in the ear. So we kind of understand if he had to. But yes, it was fight, fight, fight. Greg, you and I on this podcast, we have a lot of criticism for a lot of people. I'm not going to second guess what Trump says right after being shot. I think you can kind of say whatever you want to say at that moment. I'm not going to, he didn't strike the right tone. After being shot in the ear, he really should have chosen his words more carefully as he was bleeding and being rushed off the stage by the Secret Service for fear that there was another shooter or that the threat was not... had not been completely neutralized at that moment. How dare he? No, and in fact, I think most people either were seeing Trump pumping his fist and the now famous photograph of him surrounded by Secret Service with a flag behind him. Your reaction was either, that's the most awesome thing I've ever seen in my life, or, wow, that is an iconic image that is just, that's going straight. Give him the Pulitzer now. By the way, the photographer who took the picture of Trump under you could just kind of make out his face in between the legs of all the Secret Service people crowding around him. Her surname is Moneymaker. And I think that shot is indeed a moneymaker for a photographer. That is the sort of thing you're going to be remembered for a long, long time. And by the way, kudos to those photographers. We're going to rip it to the media, deservedly so. But a whole bunch of those people took amazing pictures that are now going to be used in history books that are just the iconic, just, unforgettable, capturing the moment right then and there. So look, it's breaking news. Somebody's going to say something that's going to be stupid. They're talking on air and live. They're filling time. They don't know what's going on. I do find it one of the more remarkable things I saw in the last 36 hours or so was apparently MSNBC was showcasing the Trump rally live in the lower corner of the screen while they were talking to in-studio guests, and the in-studio guest is talking about Trump and how terrible they are, blah, 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 blah. And in the bottom of the screen, you see the footage we've now seen a million times running in a loop. And it took, I think it was my Post colleague, Jonathan Capehart, who I was just talking with Friday, who it took him maybe 45 seconds or so to say, the breaking news chyron comes up and he says something has happened at the Trump rally. But it's kind of a little unnerving that this is happening. Oh, it's almost like a Naked Gun scene where something's happening in the background that's very wild and crazy while something very boring and predictable is happening right in front of you. But as for, I think, the Morning Joe story this morning is weird. And officially the line from MSNBC is, we're continuing our live coverage of the attempted assassination and the consequences of the investigation and preceding coverage of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, which I guess makes sense. On the other hand, Morning Joe is the signature program of MSNBC. And they've always been on. They were on during 9/11. They used to replay it every September 11th. The idea that they're going to say we're not going to show it today is weird. And the explanation of we're not 100% sure somebody won't say something stupid that will then really be used to ruin our reputation. Boy, that passes the smell test. Even if it's not Joe Scarborough or Mika Brzezinski, there are a lot of commentators on that program who have said a lot of incendiary things over the years. And it was not exactly hard to find liberal commentators over the past, starting Saturday night, saying things that were, terrible. Apparently Jack Black was doing some performance in Europe and it made some sort of comment of "Don't miss Trump next time" or something like that. You shouldn't be making those kind of comments. You shouldn't be. You just shouldn't. You hate Trump. You love Trump. You know what? I'm going to come out and say, in case anyone ever has this thought pop into their head, I don't think there are nut jobs in the audience of the Three Martini Lunch podcast, but just in case, no one should shoot Adam Gase. I really don't like Adam Gase, the former head coach of the New York Jets. I have a real beef with him, but no violence, nothing like that. Don't treat him or his family badly. Keep it entirely professional. That he's the worst coach of all time, but don't do it. And so the idea that these people have decided that their hatred of Trump, I don't think it's overstating it to say that, has gotten to the point where they're rooting for the assassin. They've gotten to the point where they'll say, "Oh, Trump is a threat to our democracy." You know what else is a threat to our democracy? Assassins. Assassins eliminate our choice at the ballot box by killing a candidate or killing someone who's elected. That's why it's illegal. That's why it's wrong. I shouldn't have to explain this sort of stuff, but apparently it does require that. And I do think, I'm sure Mika and Joe are really angry at being taken off the air, but I think maybe this is a moment for a little bit of soul searching. My other thought, and look, this is just idle speculation. Take as many grains of salt as you wish. But this happened Saturday. And people are obviously instant reacting, and people are reacting on, social media and such. But also, like, there's things like Slack. There's things where or personal email chains, personal text chains, or something like that. I have no proof of this, but I just kind of wonder: did somebody at NBC News see something on a Morning Joe Slack or a Morning Joe text chain or a Morning Joe email chain or something like that, and look at that and say, "We can't put these people on air on Monday morning"? That would explain quite a bit, wouldn't it? That maybe some people were reacting very inappropriately. And even if they said, "Oh, we've gotten all out of our system, we can be very professional on Monday morning," maybe if you're NBC, you know what? You guys spend 24 hours in the timeout chair. You take a breather, and we'll go with regular news coverage, and we'll see how you're doing Tuesday morning. We'll see how it goes. As of this as I understand it, Morning Joe comes back Tuesday. We'll see how it goes. But kind of weird things happening over at MSNBC these days.
It's always easy to speculate as to what would happen if it were the other way around, if it had been Biden or some other prominent Democrat who had been the target here. But a couple things that kind of grind the gears. There were people, I think, on the fringe. You mentioned those who were sad that the guy missed, and other people who thought it was staged. I don't know that those got mentioned much, but I guarantee you, fringe or not, if that had happened in the opposite direction, that would have occurred. And then also, Joe Biden, he did not mean this literally, even though he likes to use the word literally a lot. But he told donors on a call last week, it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. What he meant was, let's get the media attention off of the fact that I'm not up to the job and get the focus back on Donald Trump. But if Trump had said that, and then something like this had happened, that's all you would have heard from the mainstream media all week.
It is a really interesting parallel to Sarah Palin and a map on her Facebook page that had certain, important states in Senate races with bullseyes on them. And the whole point was these are the states we're targeting with our campaign efforts, with our fundraising, with, that kind of stuff, with our messaging. It was not go out and shoot the candidates in this stage. However, because of almost a emotional political frenzy at that moment, there were people who acted as if Sarah Palin had spurred this guy. Now, the shooter, by the way, I don't use shooters' names, won Greg out of a principled stance that if you try to kill someone, you should, or you kill someone, I'm not going to do anything to make you famous or make your name live on in history. Also, the second reason I can never remember their names, so it makes it a lot easier for me. The Gabby Gifford shooter, that's all you need to know about the bald, weird-looking, smiling weirdo. Was that he believed that grammar was a conspiracy theory. It was a form of mind control and stuff. This guy was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. There is no indication that he was on the right. There is no indication that he did this. He did not have left-right American politics. His politics were from Mars or Jupiter or something like that. So, Sarah Palin was blamed and scapegoated for that shooting for a long time, even after the information came out. And even in this New York Times op-ed, that I think she eventually sued the New York Times for libel, did not succeed, but kind of felt like she had a strong case, that there's kind of this just automatic belief that a Republican, if someone takes a shot at a left politician on the left, well, then the entire political right is responsible. This has happened here, and you're going to hear people quick to insist, oh, the political left had nothing to do with this. Now, maybe they didn't. Maybe this guy is a, as I said, garden variety nut job who just, was not. The donation points in that direction a little bit, but we're still very early in the investigation. I'm sure we'll learn more about this person. Look, you do have garden variety nut jobs, but we'll see. And there should, whatever the rule is for political rhetoric, and whether you're at risk of setting off some nut job, it should be consistent across both parties. I'm comfortable with either standard, but there should be one standard. And I think there are a lot of people who really want, no, it only applies to Republicans. Republicans are bad.
Well, Jim, like I said, it's a busy news day, even without this horrific event and all the ramifications from Saturday. I just saw a text or a news alert saying Trump is expected to name his running mate today. So tomorrow we'll talk about that, and you'll be in Milwaukee when we talk about it.
When next we speak, I will be in Milwaukee. And to listeners, I have no idea what the connection is going to be like. I have no idea if my good microphone is going to work. So if I sound staticky or bad, or if I sound like I'm from Mars for the rest of the week, it's because I'm going the extra mile to be there to give you live coverage. Well, not live coverage, taped coverage. Taped coverage that sounds live. Taped coverage with the quality of live coverage.
Well, it's certainly not going to be a boring week. That's for sure. Jim, be safe, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Monday, and join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.